Liam, let's dive right into it. Fibremaxxing is everywhere right now. It's a social media trend or movement where, everyone's sort of getting on board with fiber. But can you tell me what exactly is the conversation getting right and what it's getting wrong?
Absolutely. So I think it's really good because I remember seeing the trend go viral on TikTok, I think last October. And I think it's really great that we're finally talking about fiber, which is absolutely amazing because, like most wellness trends, people are turning it into a bit of a competition. So I think it's amazing to see that fiber is becoming part of the mainstream wellness conversation because for years, the focus was entirely on calories and protein and fat loss and restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from a naturopathic perspective, fiber is one of the foundations that really influences many systems of the body. Now, as soon as I mention fiber, a lot of people just think it's just digestion, but it's not because fiber impacts blood sugar regulation, it impacts hormone metabolism, detoxification pathways, inflammation, immune function, and more importantly, the microbiome. Now, in naturopathy, we always look at the body as an interconnected system, and fiber is one of those things that really affects the whole system. And I think what the wellness space is getting right is recognizing that fiber and plant diversity is chronically undernourished in most people because most people nowadays are eating highly processed diets. They're eating low in whole foods, low in phytonutrients, and low in foods that actually nourish the beneficial gut bacteria. So I think now bringing this as a trend is bringing a lot more awareness because the average intake in most Western populations is only about 15 to 20 grams. And the solid behind fiber, the solid science behind it is great because prebiotic fiber feeds your gut microbiome and it drives those short chain fatty acid production. Now, I'm going to be talking a lot about short chain fatty acids when I talk about fiber. And it's super important because it maintains the gut's integrity, but it also fuels the intestinal cells and it reduces systemic inflammation. So the trend's not wrong about any of that. The issue with it is it's turning something super beneficial into a competition because people are trying to hit huge fiber numbers overnight. They're adding psyllium husks to everything, they're adding inulin to everything. They're eating massive raw salads, fiber bars, powders. And on top of that, they haven't changed their diet at all. They're having it on an empty stomach. And then they wonder why they're bloated or in pain. And that's just like putting a band aid on a broken system.
Oh, yeah.
So in naturopathic nutrition, we honor bio individuality a lot more. So someone that has a healthy, resilient gut may thrive on this high fiber diet. Whereas someone with, let's say, IBS, like I used to have before, or chronic stress, dysbiosis, which is a gut imbalance, bloating or inflamed digestive system, they may feel a lot more worse. And again, there's another issue with the transition problem. So if you've been eating 12 grams of fiber for years, if you're on 12 grams a day, and then you're jumping into 40 grams, your microbiome is not equipped to handle that because the bacteria that ferments the fiber needs to proliferate first, and that takes weeks to happen. And then people end up having lots of gas, cramping, bloating, and then people turn to me and say, oh, fiber doesn't work for them. Right. And as a naturopath, I always tell clients don't increase more than 5 grams of fiber weekly. Take your time, but also drink lots more water with it. And I also think that people forget that digestion isn't just about what you eat, it's also about the nervous system state. Because you can eat the healthiest meal in the world, but if you're stressed, rushing, eating on the go, which I see a lot when I go to London, and if you're disconnected from your body, then your digestion will be compromised from it.
Can you tell me what brought you here and just your whole journey and the way you think about food now?
Absolutely. So, unfortunately, after COVID, my whole health transitioned. So, after COVID, I was suffering with chronic pain, chronic fatigue, bloating, and then I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. Now, fibromyalgia is one of those conditions where nothing looks wrong, but everything feels wrong. And it's like your body is constantly in a low grade state of inflammation and fatigue. So, the best way I explain it is imagine waking up every single day feeling like you've got the flu, but it never goes away. And it's a chronic condition that affects your nervous system, causing widespread pain, fatigue, digestive issues, even hypersensitivity to light and touch. Today, over 200 million people live with fibromyalgia, yet most of them look perfectly normal on the outside. But on the inside, it feels like your body's on fire or constantly tired. And on average, it can take up to 5 years to get a diagnosis, which is super, super difficult to absorb. And
Mhm.
that was one of the hardest moments of my life, hearing the words incurable condition by my doctors. felt like my world just collapsed, and it felt like I was handed a life sentence that I hadn't agreed to. But deep down, there was something inside of me that refused to accept that this was the end of my story. And that's when my real healing journey began, and I started exploring naturopathic and functional medicine. I started working with over 17 different practitioners, from Ayurvedic doctors to homeopaths, acupuncturists, nutritional therapists, and we looked at everything. And I changed my diet, my mindset, my lifestyle, and I totally cut out processed foods, gluten, refined sugar, alcohol, caffeine. And at the age of 22, I traveled to a wellness retreat in India. And for the first time in 2 years, that's when I felt pain free. It was completely life changing. And that's when I realized that healing doesn't have to come from another pill or another quick fix. It truly comes from understanding your body and supporting it naturally and giving it what it truly needs to recover. And that's what led me to nutritional therapy and naturopathic medicine. And I began working with food as medicine. So by removing any inflammatory mediators such as ultra processed foods, gluten, refined sugar, alcohol, and seed oils. And I started supporting my gut lining with some more targeted nutrients like glutamine, zinc, and fermented foods, and rebuilding my microbiome diversity by having more fiber and plant variety. And within months, I saw changes that no medication produced in years. And for those that don't know what naturopathy is, it focuses on treating the root cause rather than just suppressing the symptoms. And for example, my root causes were a gut dysbiosis, an increased intestinal permeability, so I had leaky guts, adrenal fatigue. And once you start addressing those, that's when your symptoms start to resolve. So my journey took me from a story of pain to purpose, but that really made me want to help more people understand their bodies in a more holistic way. And when working with clients, I tend to start a lot with the gut function, because almost always the gut is a starting point, and that's always involved. And that's what I do on Instagram. I have a page where I help educate people on all things wellness, nutrition, and naturopathy. And my page is Naturopathy with Liam, and I've been doing that for a few years now, and it's super rewarding to see the benefits.
Yeah. I've been following you for a while as well, and I do like getting all these tips. I do know I could up my fiber or protein intake in some cases and also just eat more like whole plant-based foods. But can you tell me what was your diet like before you were diagnosed?
So before, I used to have quite a bit of gluten, I must admit, because I was studying dentistry before in Spain
Okay.
for my diet. So before I got into naturopathy, and so I did spend 5 years there, and my diet as a student was a lot of gluten, a lot of refined sugars, a lot of dairy. Although I did have a lot of protein, I'm vegetarian, so I made sure I got a lot of protein sources. But again, it was more ultra processed sources, I would say, things like the mock meat, processed vegan products, those sort of things. Whereas now I prioritize more whole foods.
Okay, that makes sense. You were saying people are eating only 15 to 20 grams of fiber, but how much are they actually supposed to be eating?
Absolutely. So the recommendations are about 25 grams for women and about 30 to 38 grams for men. Now, in functional medicine, we tend to look at a bit more of a value of around 50 grams, that sort of range. And most people are hitting half of that because they have no idea exactly how much they should be having. Normally people are having around 15 grams. It's a little bit less in Western America, North America, whereas in Europe, people tend to be having a bit more of the 18 to 20 range. But that's because nobody has ever shown them what 25 grams of fiber actually looks like in real food, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So a fiber-rich plate might look like oats with chia seeds and berries first thing in the morning, or having lentils and quinoa with some vegetables at lunchtime, and then having some, let's say, fruits and nuts as snacks, and then some cooked vegetables, beans, or sweet potatoes at dinner. And I also love talking about plant diversity rather than just the fiber grams. And there's a lot of interesting research around aiming for roughly about 30 different plant compounds per week, because different fibers and polyphenols feed different strains of beneficial bacteria. So those plant compounds can be vegetables, herbs, spices, legumes, seeds, nuts, fruits, whole grains. So there's lots of diversity,
Yeah.
and the gut thrives on diversity. So if I could get every client to just do one thing for their fiber intake and gut health, it would be to eat legumes daily. Because half a cup of lentils, for example, is equivalent to 8 grams of fiber. Plus, with that, you're getting plant protein, resistant starch,
Yeah.
and prebiotic compounds. And it's one of the cheapest foods that you can buy. And another thing I look at is practical tracking for clients. So I don't put clients on fibergram tracking long term. So right now we're talking about a lot of grams.
Yeah.
I don't make them do this for long term
Okay.
because that causes an unhealthy relationship with food. But
Yeah.
just keep them on it for a few weeks, and people are actually shocked by how low their intake actually is. And once they see that gap,
Yeah.
that's when the motivation becomes a lot easier. And most people don't realize that not all fiber works the same way. People may have heard that there's two different types of fiber, soluble and insoluble fiber.
Yeah.
Now, soluble fiber absorbs water and it forms like a gel like structure in the gut. And that really helps to stabilize blood sugar levels. And it also helps to reduce cholesterol levels and it helps to keep you fuller for longer. So, and that feeds the beneficial bacteria. So, when I talk about soluble fiber, it's things like oats, chia seeds, flax seeds, beans, lentils, and berries.
Okay.
And then we have insoluble fiber.
Mm.
Now, that's a bit more about movement and elimination because what that does is it adds bulk to the stool and it helps keep the digestive system a lot more regular. So it's really important for bowel health and detoxification. And that causes the body to eliminate any waste and all those excess hormones through the gut. So insoluble fiber sources are leafy greens, broccoli, nuts, seeds, and fruit and vegetable skins. And I think this is where bioindividuality matters again,
Yeah.
because someone with a healthy gut may thrive on having lots of fiber. But again, someone like myself before who had IBS or gut inflammation may need to build it up slowly, especially insoluble fiber from lots of different raw
Makes a
vegetables.
lot of sense actually, because I had a friend who came across fibremaxxing, the term. She really just read the headline, did not go through it and do her research. You know how it is now, these people are like, you gotta add more protein, you gotta add more fiber. And you just think, yeah, okay, I gotta do this, add it on to everything,
Yeah.
breakfast and lunch and dinner. And then she did end up
Yeah.
in the hospital with severe digestive issues. She just had this pain and they couldn't find out what it was, but it ended up being because of too much fiber and just
Uh,
digestive issues.
Yeah, so true. It's crazy. Like that's the thing. Like people are having about let's say 18 grams of fiber,
Mhm.
and then they're trying to jump into that 40 range. Your gut can't cope with that. That's why you should only do it in increments. And also another thing is a lot of people tell the people to have lots of fiber, but without telling them to hydrate themselves, making sure you're having lots of water when you have that psyllium husk, for example. There's a common mistake that I see.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And low fiber intake has also been linked to some serious long-term health conditions, right? Could you tell us what the clinical evidence really shows us?
Absolutely. So the evidence around fiber and long-term health outcomes is actually very strong, and especially regarding cardiovascular disease and colorectal cancer.
So,
So in terms of colorectal cancer, there's actually lots of multiple large-scale meta-analysis
mm,
that show that each additional 10 grams of dietary fiber per day is associated with approximately 10% reduction in colorectal cancer risk.
okay.
And fiber supports bowel regularity, as we said, and a healthy transit time.
Mhm.
And that means that there's waste products and toxins spend a lot less time sitting in the colon. And it also supports the production of the short chain fatty acids that we mentioned earlier on.
Mm.
And for example, one of them is butyrate, which nourishes the cells lining the colon and they have anti inflammatory effects.
Okay.
The second one is cardiovascular disease. A lot of people know the benefits with that. And the key with this one is soluble fiber. So remember, we spoke about oats, psyllium husk, and legumes. They've all been studied a lot, and they show that 5 to 10 grams of that soluble fiber per day reduces LDL cholesterol by 3 to 5%. And LDL cholesterol is that bad cholesterol.
Yeah.
And it also improves insulin sensitivity by reducing that post-meal glucose spikes. And it also helps to lower the inflammatory markers like CRP.
Yeah.
And high fiber diets are associated with having a lower type 2 diabetes risk, which is amazing. And in terms of dementia, the research is a lot more newer, but the short chain fatty acids produced by gut bacteria from that fiber fermentation, especially butyrate and propionate, they cross the blood-brain barrier. Now, butyrate has neuroprotective effects, so it reduces any neuroinflammation.
Okay.
And you may have heard of the gut-to-brain axis,
Yes.
because that's
That was my next question.
yeah, oh, brilliant. Yeah, so it's a real thing and people don't know that. And fiber is one of those primary drivers of a gut environment that supports brain health.
Okay.
And again, I think it's super important not to just oversimplify saying that fiber prevents disease because, again, health outcomes are influenced by overall lifestyle patterns. So, again, if you're not addressing your sleep, your stress, your movement, your environment,
Mhm.
relationships, and diet quality collectively, then just fiber is just not going to improve it, right?
Yeah.
If fiber is one very important piece of that bigger picture.
Yeah. So then would you say fiber and protein are like, because those are the two macros that everyone's chasing right now, would you say those make
Yeah,
a good combination?
absolutely. So absolutely, they should be working together because right now the wellness culture has become very protein obsessed. Again, I love that trend. I love seeing so many youngsters diving into protein and obsessing by it because protein is obviously very important, right? It supports muscle health, hormones, blood sugar stability, recovery, satiety, and healthy aging.
Mhm.
So, as a nutritional therapist, I don't believe that protein is overrated.
Okay.
But what I do think is happening is that people are becoming so focused on hitting those protein targets
Hmm.
that they're unintentionally neglecting their plant diversity and fiber intake. Because you see people having lots of protein coffees, protein bars, meat heavy meals, high protein snacks all day long, but they're barely eating vegetables, legumes, seeds, or fiber rich carbohydrates anymore because carbs have been demonized for so long, right? And from a naturopathic perspective, that creates an imbalance because protein feeds us, but fiber also feeds the microbiome. So I always say that you feed your muscles with protein, but you feed your gut with fiber, and both are super, super important
Okay.
because the microbiome influences digestion, inflammation, immunity,
Yeah.
hormones, detoxification pathways, and also your mental health.
Yeah.
So if we just hyper focus on protein whilst neglecting the fiber, we may support muscle mass, but also compromise gut health long term. So I think the balance is really key. And I think a healthy plate should ideally contain quality protein sources,
Hmm.
having those fiber rich carbohydrates, those healthy fats, and again, adding that color and plant diversity. And it's important to remember that many fiber rich foods also contain lots of beneficial nutrients, antioxidants, and polyphenols that support the overall health beyond just digestion. For example, if we start to include a lot more proteins, plant proteins specifically, think of legumes, tempeh, tofu, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. They are all unique by providing good protein and also good fiber.
Yeah.
For example, black beans, they contain 15 grams of protein, but they also contain 15 grams of fiber per cup.
Okay.
And lentils, edamame, chickpeas, they're all very similar. So that way you're hitting the protein target, but you're also feeding the gut microbiome. And at the moment, we're seeing a very dominant high protein culture with people having chicken breasts, whey protein, eggs, Greek yogurt, deli meats, but they hardly have any fiber and their protein intake is absolutely excellent. But if we look at their gut markers, if we were to do a proper stool test
Hmm.
and if we assess them, they're often quite poor. And again, like you said earlier on, clients experience constipation, bloating, and reduced bowel frequency. And the thing is, the protein products that people are ingesting nowadays are very ultra processed.
Yeah.
Protein bars, shakes, powders, and they contain isolated proteins with pretty much no fiber.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they're with additives, they're with artificial sweeteners, which now there's a lot of research to show that it disrupts the microbiome and it also contains emulsifiers. So I always tend to focus on whole food because a 25-gram hit from protein from a real food source is not the same as a 25-gram protein hit from a processed bar. So I don't see protein and fiber as competing targets.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to hit your protein goal,
Hmm.
but also ensure that 30 to 40% of your total protein comes from plant sources. So that way your fiber intake sort of takes care of itself. So for example, start adding lentils to your bolognese, eating tea instead of chicken twice a week, like snacking on hummus, just rather than just having like pizza meals.
And what would you suggest for people on the go? Because I know I am someone who picks up a protein bar right after the gym. It's
Right.
convenient. And I'm
Yeah.
walking back home. I've got a 20-minute walk. I need to eat something right after. What would you recommend then?
So I'd recommend having like edamame. That's a super good protein source.
Okay.
I would also look at making a smoothie before you go to the gym. So that way you can have a nice big smoothie. And an ingredient that contains a lot of protein is tofu, for example. Now, a lot of people don't venture into having silken tofu in their smoothie.
Yeah.
That's one of the easiest ways that vegans and vegetarians can increase their protein source. So by having that silken tofu, and you can add all your favorite fruits and vegetables, it doesn't really have much of it. And then you can add, let's say, your favorite superfoods, let's say spirulina, matcha, for example. And then you can have a clean protein powder as well if you want to increase the protein even more. Then that way you're getting that protein target as
Okay.
well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Again, that good fiber source.
Or for the people in Dubai who tend to stop at the gas station, I used to be one of those people. What would you recommend picking up from there? Because yeah, the the options aren't always
That's
healthy.
good.
Yeah, you really have to pick and choose. So, what would you recommend there?
True. In that case, I would say maybe go for a Greek yogurt or make sure you're going for like a full fat yogurt, perhaps. I would say that's probably one of the cleaner options. Don't start going for the flavored yogurt and
Yeah.
all of that. And just be conscious again with all the protein products. Those bars, those other high protein snacks, they come a lot of those artificial sweeteners, which really damages the gut a lot
Yeah,
more.
there's a lot of sugar loaded in these products. And if you're not really paying attention to it, I don't read every ingredient and the quantities. But when I do look at like a condiment, even there's a lot of sugar packed in.
A lot. And people don't
Yeah.
realize. And again, it comes under different names. So people just need to be
Yeah.
aware that anything ending in O's is a sugar. And again, try and read the label. And the first three ingredients is measured by weight. So if those first two ingredients contain sugar, if it contains refined oils, then you know that most of that snack is literally just refined oils. It's just, dessert basically in a
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's a protein thrown in this.
exactly. And unfortunately, marketing tricks are too smart nowadays. So consumers need to be a lot more smarter.
Yeah, lovely. And so, with like summer travel and everything coming up, tell me, how does flying impact your gut?
It impacts it significantly because it has a significant impact on digestion and gut health. And in naturopathic medicine, we talk about travel being a huge stressor to the body. And so when you travel, especially long haul flights, you're dealing with, let's say, dehydration, disrupted circadian rhythms, poor sleep, reduced movement and stress hormones, processed airport food, and those cabin
Yeah.
pressure changes. Now, all of that put together affects digestion big time. So people experience bloating, constipation, sluggish digestion, fatigue and cravings. So when it comes to the cabin pressure at high altitudes, any gas that we have in our digestive tract expands by 30%. So if you're already feeling bloated or let's say trapped gas before boarding, that
Mm-hmm.
amplifies in the air. And that's why people feel uncomfortable on flights, even if they've hardly eaten anything.
Did
The
not
next
know
thing,
that.
yeah, it's crazy. The circadian rhythm as well, that's become a huge topic. But the gut microbiome runs on a circadian rhythm, and time zone differences really affect that rhythm. And there's lots of studies that have shown measurable shifts in the gut microbiome composition. And the next one is dehydration. And that I think we all know is one of the biggest gut stressors. And airplane cabins are extremely dry. And dehydration basically slows that intestinal transit. It reduces any mucus production in the gut lining and it worsens constipation a lot more. So I think it's super important that we need to have a minimum amount of, let's say, 500 milliliters of water every 2 hours of flight, and also avoid having any alcohol and excess caffeine in the air because that has a diuretic effect and it worsens it a lot more. And
Okay.
again, going to the airport and having in-flight food, they're probably one of the worst options, right? They're low in fiber. Airplane food especially seems to be very high in sodium. It's ultra processed, very high in sugar. So ideally you would want to prepare some food before traveling. And the nervous system aspect is also very huge because people are rushing through the airports. They're stressed, they're overstimulated, they're underslept and overcaffeinated, and they're eating irregularly because digestion works best in a parasympathetic rest and digest state. And a lot of people that are rushing, people tend to be in a fight or flight mode a lot of the times.
Yeah. What would you recommend people have at the airport?
So ideally opt for salads if you were to have anything. I would say go for those sort of healthy options, having some light fruits perhaps. But ideally, I would say rather than eating at the airport, I would say try and eat before you go home. And that's one of the biggest things I would suggest because I always tell clients to prepare
Okay.
48 hours before traveling. So ideally, like let's say 2 days before departure, start increasing more
Okay.
fermented foods such as kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, and kombucha. That really helps to prime your microbiome before travel disruption hits. And that really helps to maximize the resilience of your gut. But if you're prone to, let's say, bloating or gas, try and reduce any high FODMAP foods before flying. So these are foods like onion, garlic, cruciferous vegetables, lentils in large quantities, because whatever fermentation is happening will be amplified, like we said, at
Yeah.
high altitudes. And let's say the morning of your flight, try and eat a balanced meal before going because you won't find a better option at the airport, to be honest with you. Because let's try and have some overnight oats with flax seeds and fruits. Let's have some eggs on sourdough toast, or let's say a large smoothie with spinach and bananas. Don't try and leave the house hungry because hungry people make those poor decisions. And ideally try and pack some snacks like some nuts and seeds. Again, they're fiber rich and protein. Add some dried figs or apricots, let's say, for some quick prebiotic fiber, but only have around 1 to 2 pieces because, again, they're very high in sugar. And try and have some fresh fruits or some, let's say, roasted chickpeas. I like to have that as well. And then in flight, try and hydrate consistently. Walk the cabin every hour because movement supports gut motility, but it's also important to get that movement during, let's say, 7, 8 hour flight. And say no to the bread rolls and desserts during flights. It's a big no-go. And make sure that we're having electrolytes because we have to be hydrated from a cellular level. So just get those electrolyte sachets and try and drink that before your flights and let's say once you land as well. And I also try to think in terms of adding rather than just restricting. So obsessing over foods, avoiding certain foods. I'll always ask, okay, here's the dish. How can I add some color, some plants and nourishment into the
What about
dish?
tomato juice?
Thing is, with drinks on the flights, they're all like processed juices, right? And again, they seem to be very high in sugars. So try and avoid them if you can. Again, I would say the boring option, but try and like have some sparkling water with lemon juice. Try and stick to more fresh juices, which obviously they don't serve. But try and opt for, let's say, herbal teas, for example, so that way you feel like you're still drinking something. And you can also opt for kombucha. Kombucha is a great non-alcoholic option. It's great for the gut, and it just tastes
I love
great.
kombucha. I have it every day, but I don't know. They're available on.
With Lions, I think, yeah, I think I've only ever been on one flight. Yeah, they had it.
And you were saying electrolytes. You said bring it along. Do you have like a travel kit that you take along on flight? You can show us.
It's evolved over the years. So I think a few things that I always travel with me is, let's say, magnesium glycinate. That really helps to support sleep. This honestly, this game changer help my sleep. Electrolytes, unfortunately, I've just run out, but basically you need sodium, potassium, and magnesium to support cellular hydration. So I usually get mine from HealthNag. I also have digestive enzymes. You can see them. So they're super helpful.
Okay. Is that different from probiotics?
Yes, it's slightly different. So probiotics, they're also great for gut health, but digestive enzymes are really helpful when eating different foods and when you tend to eat a lot more heavier meals. So all you need to do with digestive enzymes is, let's say, just have one capsule before eating. You just need to have one capsule before 5 minutes before eating your dinner or lunch. And it really helps to produce those digestive enzymes so you break down food a lot better. The thing with probiotics is they're absolutely brilliant to take on holidays. But again, it only has a certain amount of strength. So both are brilliant as well. And one of the next ones is psyllium husk sachets. I don't have sachets. In case you haven't seen it yet, psyllium husk looks like it comes like this. So I've got the big packet here. But again, like I mentioned earlier, just make sure that you're having it with a large glass of water. And it's brilliant for feeding beneficial bacteria, and it reduces constipation, especially whilst traveling long haul. Another good one is echinacea. So that's a great herbal blend for boosting your immunity. I always take that with me as well. We've got ginger and peppermint tea that helps with nausea, bloating, and digestion. I've also got my red light face mask. So I always take that
I love
in flights. Yeah, in flights, but also when I'm on holiday as well. It helps with skin health, reducing fine lines. It helps with sleep as well. And also my blue light blocking glasses, because again, that's brilliant.
amazing.
Yeah, to help my sleep as well.
It really does affect the circadian rhythm.
Absolutely. Like we're all surrounded, like we all have that tendency to go and watch Netflix at night time or, spend time on Instagram or TikTok scrolling. So it really helps just 3 hours before going to bed to use them. I also have liposomal vitamin D and K2 and magnesium as well. And something that a lot of people don't travel with is functional mushrooms. So these are functional mushroom sprays. So this is like reishi, for example, that really helps with sleep and just put it under the tongue. And you've also got cordyceps, and that helps with energy throughout the day. So I tend to use those a lot, especially in my naturopathic practice. We use functional mushrooms a lot for gut health. You might have heard of lion's mane for brain health and reducing brain fog. That's become very popular on TikTok. And for immunity, I always carry zinc and vitamin C as well. And that helps with immune cell function, but it also has a lot of antioxidant effects. And unfortunately, I don't have this one with me, but it's liposomal glutathione. So glutathione is the body's master antioxidant. And liposomal means it's a lot more better absorbed. And that really helps to support phase 2 liver detoxification. So when we're traveling, that tends to involve a lot more of irregular eating, different foods abroad, disrupted sleep. So that all increases oxidative stress. That really helps to to calm it down.
That's quite a kit you've got there. I love it. I definitely was up my game.
Yeah.
I've got probiotics and vitamins, and that's about it. My AG1 sachets, and that's about yeah.
That's brilliant. Like it's changed over the years. There's a lot more that I carry as well. I didn't want to overwhelm people, but I usually carry a lot of my superfoods as well. So it just evolves, especially because you don't know what sort of foods you're going to get on the other side. I think
Exactly.
it's super important to get nutrients still.
For people who don't have the kit, at a hotel breakfast, what are you reaching for when you're at your destination?
So I always build a breakfast that keeps my blood sugar stable and gives me sustained energy. So I always combine protein, fiber, healthy fats, and lots of color in my food. So I tend to have a lot of fresh fruits, especially berries, because they have a lot more polyphenols. I always opt for the fresh egg station, getting 4 eggs, because that really helps to slow down glucose absorption and keeps me full for a lot longer. I also incorporate lots of seeds. I'm allergic to nuts, but I would have lots of nuts as well. But I would also opt for lots of vegetables. So, things like roasted tomatoes, mushrooms, things like that. I would always go for full fat yogurt, not fat free, because fat free tends to have a lot more additives, and the fat really helps to support satiety, so keeps you fuller for a lot longer. And the things I always skip are the pastries and bread, very, very low in nutrition, and they cause lots of spikes in blood sugar. Again, processed orange juice, which we were talking about earlier on, because they contain the same amount of sugar as a soft drink, and they absolutely don't have any fiber in them. And again, I always skip the sugary cereals and granola, again, because they're just full of sugar. But the good thing is about most international hotels is they have lots of great legume options. So, for example, if it comes to the Middle East, you have a lot of fowl, which is like spiced fava beans. You have dal, you have hummus, you have lentil dishes. These are all super high fiber options, and they're a lot better than any pastry options that you get.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. Yeah, that sounds like a good, healthy breakfast. I must say, even though I did know that about the orange juice, I still always order the orange juice. It's just in my head. It's like, oh yeah, healthy juice, but
Yeah,
it is loaded
so
with
true.
sugars. Yeah.
So true.
And what about in room?
So because I'm gluten free, I'd usually have like, let's say, gluten free pasta, but I'd also opt for fresh soups, fresh salads. Try and go for a lot of, let's say, if you have fish, try and have oily fish to get those omega 3s in, which really helps reduce any inflammation. So just be conscious about the foods that you're eating, and remember that try and have more color on your plates. That's what's important.
To not pasta and fries.
Yeah, yeah, definitely skip the French fries and desserts. It's easy to order the ice creams, the Roomba.
Yeah, so true. Perfect. We always end every interview with what's your wellness photo recipe? So could you tell us, Liam?
I love that question. So I always start by drinking a liter of water first thing in the morning. I would then have like a large glass of water with a pinch of salt, sea salt, and lemon to really replenish the minerals I've lost over nighttime. I then like to go outside and stand on my balcony for some natural sunlight, which takes 10 minutes. It costs absolutely nothing. It's a free biohack that you guys can have. And that way I get some vitamin D, it boosts the serotonin, so it's really good for boosting that mood. I could then have my breakfast, which usually is about 4 eggs with my superfood smoothie. So my superfood smoothie, I would include the functional mushrooms, I would have matcha, let's say spirulina, bee pollen, so I include different things. And then I tend to do my workout. So my workout usually involves walking. I would then switch between yoga and reformer Pilates. I do that about 4 to 5 times a week. And then some paddle maybe. And my workouts have really changed over the years. Like before, I used to really focus on a lot of HIIT workouts before my diagnosis, whereas now it's a lot more slowing down and stretching and doing more reformer Pilates because it targets those smaller muscles.
Yeah.
And then I have my matcha. I'm absolutely obsessed with matcha for all its lovely health benefits as well. And I tend to have a heavier meal at lunchtime because insulin sensitivity peaks mid morning to early afternoon. So the same meal that's consumed at midday produces a smaller response to the same meal consumed at 8 p.m. So again, for lunch, I'd normally have like a large salad with fresh soup. And then I would tend to work for the rest of the day or go to some wellness events or try some longevity treatments. I love trying different things. And then I tend to wind down at 9 p.m. And again, I wear those blue light blocking glasses that I showed you earlier on because blue light suppresses melatonin production. And then I would have my dinner. So I'd have my dinner a bit earlier, but it's lighter than lunch. But you usually have a fresh soup and salad, so different soup and salad again. And then I take my magnesium glycinate, which I showed you earlier on, and I have like a golden turmeric milk just to wind down. And that you use that as a ritual just to really calm the body down. And my body knows that this is the end of the day. I like to have like an Epsom salt bath to really just relax and wind down. And then I'm a huge advocate for red light therapy and PMF mats. So again, that really helps with getting to a mitochondrial level. So it really helps to boost energy, but also helps with skin health and all that lovely stuff. And then I'm in bed by about 11 p.m. because sleep is where the lymphatic system clears metabolic waste from the brain, and when gut repair happens and when cortisol resets. So I treat that very seriously. And again, it's one of the top beauty and longevity secrets is to have solid 8 to 9 hours of sleep, which is underrated big time.
Yeah.
But honestly, wellness goes beyond food. Community and laughter matters a lot. So luckily I'm surrounded by lots of lovely, amazing people. So it's about incorporating all of them. But I feel like a lot of the wellness trends today tend to stress a lot of people out and makes it a lot more stressful than it needs to be. Just make sure that you get your foundations right, and everything will go well.
Sounds lovely. Thank you, Liam.
Thank you so much.